I never really knew my Aunt Lydia. She wasn't the kind of relative who showed up at holidays or sent birthday cards. My mom's side, she preferred to keep to herself, which usually meant something no one wanted to explain. So when I got a call from her lawyer saying she'd left me her apartment, I didn't even know what to say. I'd never been there. Didn't even know she owned property in the city. But the address was close to where I worked, and I couldn't afford rent anymore. So I took it. The building was older than it looked on Google Maps. One of those pre-war conversions with high ceilings, brass mail slots, and faded wallpaper that peeled in perfect lines. The hallway smelled like dust and lavender. Inside, the apartment was surprisingly clean. Sparse, but not abandoned. There was furniture, a few dishes, even a box of tea in the cupboard. It felt like someone had just stepped out and never came back. The only thing that really stood out was how quiet it was. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears. Too still, too heavy. You could hear the faint hum of electricity, but nothing else. No traffic, no neighbors, just the sound of the floor creaking under my shoes. I walked through every room, expecting to find something personal. Photos, mail, notes. But there was nothing. Every drawer was empty. Every wall blank, except one. In the bedroom, there was a section of wallpaper that looked slightly newer than the rest, as if someone had patched over something. It was subtle, but the texture didn't match. When I pressed against it, it felt hollow. I should have left it alone. But curiosity gets you when you're alone in a place that doesn't feel yours yet. I peeled back the corner of the wallpaper. A small wooden panel sat behind it. Smooth, old, nailed shut. I didn't open it that night, but when I turned off the light and caught my reflection in the window, I noticed something strange. The dark outline behind me wasn't the shape of the room. It was taller, rectangular, almost like a mirror. One that was standing right behind me. I turned around. The wall was bare. I couldn't stop thinking about that wall. The patch job, the hollow sound, the way the light seemed to bend near it all bothered me. By the third night, I'd made up my mind. I pulled the dresser away, peeled back the wallpaper, and pried at the panel until the nails came loose one by one. Behind it wasn't storage space like I expected. It was glass. A mirror toll, heavy, built directly into the wall itself. It looked older than the apartment, framed in dark wood, carved with strange looping symbols that didn't seem decorative. They looked more like letters from an alphabet I'd never seen. The glass was spotless, almost unnaturally clean, except for one thing. When I stood in front of it, my reflection didn't line up. It was just a hair off, like a video playing half a frame too late. I laughed it off at first. Maybe the glass was warped. Old mirrors do that. I leaned in closer, trying to see the distortion. That's when I realized I couldn't see the room behind me at all. The mirror only showed me nothing else. No bed, no lamp, no wall. Just me, surrounded by darkness. I stepped back fast, heart pounding. Then, as if on cue, the reflection snapped to normal. The room appeared again. The bed, the lamp, everything where it should be. I should have covered it back up right then. Instead, I cleaned it. I don't know why, maybe. It felt like claiming ownership of the place. I wiped the frame, the edges, the glass. The more I cleaned, the colder the air became. Not a breeze, not a draft, just a temperature drop that made my fingers ache. When I finally stopped, I noticed condensation on the surface. 3 faint handprints too, large to be mine-pressed against the inside of the glass. They faded slowly, leaving behind streaks that almost looked like fingerprints dragged downward. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch, the refrigerator cycling, the pipes creaking. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and went to get water. On my way back, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. Tea mirror. I hadn't turned on any lights, but it was faintly glowing, soft, silver light, like the reflection of the moon, except the curtains were closed. I watched it for a full minute. The glow pulsed. Once, then dimmed, until it was gone. I told myself. I imagined it, but when morning came, there was something new written in the dust of my dresser. One word, scrawled in a shaky line. Luke Luke. The word stayed there all morning. Look. I wiped it away with the side of my hand, but it came back the next day. Faintly, this time, like it had been written from the other side of the dust. That afternoon, I finally did what it said. The mirror looked perfectly normal in daylight. The wood frame had a faint reddish tint, now, almost like it had been freshly polished. When I leaned in close, I could see the faint imperfections in the glass, tiny air bubbles, scratches, the signs of age. I tilted my head left, then right. My reflection did the same. For a second, it felt stupid. I'd built all this up in my head, but then I noticed something small, something that shouldn't have been there. The light switch. In the reflection, it was on the wrong wall. I turned around. The switch was where it had always been, by the door. But in the reflection, it was across the room, beside the bed. I thought maybe the mirror was angled weirdly, but it wasn't. It was flat against the wall. Primera turned back, trying to make sense of it. And that's when I saw the second thing. The reflection of the window showed the curtains open, sunlight spilling in. But behind me, the curtains were shut tight. I froze, staring at that impossible sunlight. It flickered once, like a glitch in an old video. And then the reflection adjusted itself. The curtains closed again. The light gone. I whispered, "What is this?" and reached out to touch the surface. My fingers brushed the glass, and it was warm. Not the kind of warmth from sunlight. It felt alive, like skin. For the rest of the day, I tried to ignore it. I went out, walked around the city, stayed away until it got dark. But when I came home and turned on the hallway light, I realized something else had changed. The mirror's position. It was slightly lower than before, like it had shifted an inch downward. The nails that held it looked strained, almost bending. I stepped closer. My reflection stared back, perfectly still, but there was something off about my face. The expression wasn't quite right, the mouth a little too tense, the eyes not blinking in sync with mine. I blinked. Once, it didn't. The next moment, it did, but the smile that flickered across its lips wasn't mine. It was too slow, deliberate. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The sound echoed through the apartment. When I looked again, the reflection was normal. Everything looked the same, except the word "look" was back. Only now, it was written on the inside of the glass. That night, I covered the mirror with a bedsheet. I couldn't stand seeing it anymore. That perfect surface pretending to be harmless. The air in the room felt lighter once it was covered. Quieter. I fell asleep faster than I had in days. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of fabric sliding against glass. I sat up slowly, my chest tight. The sheet I'd draped over the mirror was moving, just barely. It wasn't falling, it was shifting side to side, like something was brushing against it from underneath. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a few seconds, it went still again. I told myself I was dreaming, but the sound had been too clear. I turned on my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the sheet. The outline beneath it looked wrong. Not flat, not mirror-shaped anymore. There was a curve, a bend, like something was pressing out toward me. Primera vez que davaste o filmin. Then, without warning, the sheet fell forward. It didn't drift down like cloth should. It dropped straight to the floor, as if something had pulled it down from the inside. The mirror was uncovered, and I wasn't alone in it. My reflection was there, but so was another shape just behind me. A figure, tall and narrow, standing too close. He spun around, but the room was empty. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there. It wasn't moving, just standing in the same spot. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see its outline, one shoulder higher than the other. Its head tilted slightly like it was listening. The worst part was its position. It was facing me. Not my reflection. Me. I stumbled backward until I hit the wall. The thing didn't move, but my reflection did, lifting its arm slowly until its hand touched the glass. I watched as frost spread out from where its palm pressed. The figure behind it started to fade, sinking backward into the dark, until it disappeared completely. I waited for the frost to melt, but it didn't. It stayed, shaped exactly like my handprint, even though I hadn't touched it. That was the moment I realized it wasn't showing me anymore. It was showing what was standing behind me. I covered the mirror again, this time nailing the sheet into the frame. Every hammer hits echoed through the apartment like gunfire. When I finished, I stood there in silence. Just as I started to breathe again, a faint whisper came from behind the sheet. My name, spoken in my own voice. I tried to ignore the voice. I told myself I was imagining it, that after so many sleepless nights, my brain was filling in the quiet. But when I replayed my recording from that night, the whisper was there. Soft, clear, right before the clip cut to static. My own voice, saying my name. After that, I couldn't leave it alone. I pulled the sheet off the mirror. Even though my hands were shaking, the glass looked perfectly still. Too still. No reflection of light, no hint of distortion. It felt like staring into a photograph that hadn't finished developing. I waved my hand slowly in front of it. My reflection followed, but with a delay. Half a second late, then a full second. I moved faster, testing it left, right, forward. The lag stayed. Then something changed. My reflection raised its arm before I did. I froze. It stood perfectly still, arm extended, waiting, like it was giving me permission to catch up. I stepped back, and the reflection stepped forward. The glass rippled faintly, as though separating two different depths of air. I could feel a pull in my stomach, like vertigo. I whispered, "What do you want?" It mouthed something back. 3 words I couldn't hear. But when I replayed the footage later, slowed down to a crawl, I could see it clearly. Take my place. I shut the laptop and sat in the dark for almost an hour, staring at the wall across from me. The reflection's movements looped in my mind, slow, deliberate, rehearsed. The next morning, every reflective surface in the apartment was slightly off. The kitchen faucet showed me standing closer than I really was. The microwave door showed my eyes open when they weren't. Even the dark screen of the TV showed faint motion when the room was still. It wasn't just the mirror anymore. It was everything. I tried covering them all. Towels over the TV, tape across the chrome handles, even foil over the bathroom mirror. But reflections don't care about glass. They find their way through. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I noticed my reflection move again, just barely. A twitch before I lifted my hand. Then it smiled, a tired, knowing smile. I dropped the toothbrush. My reflection kept brushing, calmly, as if it hadn't noticed me at all. I whispered, "Stop." It didn't. The next time I blinked, it was standing still again, perfectly normal. But the toothbrush was gone from my hand, and when I looked down, it wasn't in the sink either. I stopped recording for a while. I thought maybe ignoring it would starve it, that if I didn't give it attention, it would lose interest. For 2 days, nothing happened. No movement, no whispers, no strange delays. Then, on the 3rd night, I heard it again. Not a whisper this time, a voice, my voice. It came from the mirror, low and steady, as if I were standing behind the glass, speaking softly into my own ear. At first it said ordinary things. "You're tired, you should rest." But then it started saying things I had done, sighed out loud, thoughts that had just passed through my head seconds before. "You don't belong here. You should have left the panel closed." Every time I tried to drown it out, music, TV, anything, the voice adjusted its tone. It matched the rhythm of whatever I was listening to, blending in, like it was syncing itself to my world. I unplugged everything. The apartment went silent again. I sat on the bed, breathing hard, staring at the mirror through the thin sheet that covered it. My reflection was faint beneath the fabric, like a shadow pressing forward. The voice spoke again, muffled but clear. "Let me out." I grabbed the hammer from under the sink. I don't have an knowi, and I hit the mirror as hard as I could. The sheet barely moved. There was no sound of impact, no glass shattering, just silence. When I pulled the sheet away, the surface was flawless. Not a crack, not even a smudge. but my reflection looked different now. It was leaning forward, closer to the glass than I was. Its lips were still moving, but I couldn't hear anything. I stepped closer, and the sound came back like I was tuning a radio. My own voice whispered, "You're the echo." I stumbled back, shaking my head, covering my ears. "Stop, stop, stop." The lights flickered. The walls groaned. The voice rose just enough to drown my thoughts. "You think you're the real one? You're not. You're just a side that looks back." I ran from the room, slamming the door. I could still hear it whispering through the wood, soft and patient, like it was talking to itself. I stayed in the kitchen until sunrise, every light on, waiting for the sounds to stop. They never did. Even now, when I speak, sometimes I hear it answer, not from the mirror, from inside my voice. The mirror stopped showing me altogether. One morning, I stood in front of it and there was nothing, no reflection, no light, just a dull gray haze behind the glass. When I moved, the haze rippled faintly, like fog disturbed by a breeze. I waved my hand. Nothing. Then, faintly, a shape began to form. It was my apartment, but reversed. Everything was flipped, like a photograph mirrored the wrong way. The furniture, the lamp, even the cracks in the ceiling all on the opposite side. But that wasn't what froze me. It wasn't my apartment anymore. The walls were darker. The air inside looked thick, like smoke suspended in water. The lamp and the reflection flickered, even though mine was steady. And in the reflection of my bed, the sheet was disturbed, as if someone had just stood up. I reached forward, barely touching the glass. It was cold again, colder than it had ever been. My fingertips left pale prints, but on the other side, those same prints smeared upward, like a hand had dragged across them in response. I whispered, "Who's in there?" The fog cleared slightly, revealing something that made my breath catch. A person stood in the reversed room. Not me. Taller, thinner, moving with strange, slow grace. Their head turned toward me, but the face was blurred, like static. They stepped closer, matching my position perfectly. Every motion mirrored mine, but half a second ahead. When I lifted my hand, theirs was already there, waiting. I stepped back. They didn't. They kept walking until their palms pressed flat against the glass. The sound that came from it wasn't tapping or knocking. It was deeper. A hollow, resonant thud that I could feel in my chest. The floor beneath me trembled slightly. Behind the figure, the reversed room began to change. The walls bent inward, twisting, the ceiling lowering, shadows bleeding through the edges. And in the reflection, my own apartment started to darken and sink, the light dimming without the bulbs flickering. I turned to the side. The corners of the real room were bending, not visually, but physically. The air itself was curving, like a lens warping. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection had returned. But it wasn't doing what I was doing. It was facing away from me, looking into the reversed room. Then it stepped forward and disappeared into the glass. I was staring at an empty room again. Except now, the reversed version wasn't in the mirror anymore. It was behind me. I don't remember falling asleep. When I opened my eyes, the room looked different. Brighter, cleaner. The smell of dust and metal was gone. The air felt lighter, almost fresh. For a moment, I thought it was morning. Then I noticed the mirror. It wasn't on the wall anymore. It was standing in the center of the room, perfectly balanced, reflecting everything. The bed, the lamp, the window, everything but me. I walked around it, thinking the angle was wrong. But no matter where I stood, my reflection wasn't there. The room was empty inside the glass. I whispered, "Where are you?" The voice answered from behind me, "Eri, Eri." I turned, and for the briefest second, I saw myself standing in the doorway. Same clothes, same face, but the eyes were wrong. Darker, deeper. Like the glass behind him was catching light from somewhere else. He smiled. Not a cruel smile, just knowing. I took one step forward. A mirrored Italiano, I raised my hand. He did too, but his movement came first, like he was guiding me. The mirror's surface began to ripple, faint waves moving outward from the center. I felt the pull again, that weightless tug in my chest, as if the air itself were leaning toward the glass. The other me reached out and pressed his palm against the surface. The ripples slowed. I could see frost forming beneath his fingers. I told myself not to move, but my arm lifted anyway. My hand touched the same spot, and the cold burned through my skin like metal in winter. For one heartbeat, I saw both rooms at once, mine and the reversed one, overlapping, folding into each other. Then everything went white. When he woke up, the mirror was gone. The wall was smooth again. No frame, no glass, no trace that it had ever been there. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt heavy. The air was different now. It echoed when I spoke, like the sound was bouncing off something hollow. I looked toward the window. The city outside was reversed. Cars on the wrong side. Signs written backward. The world flipped like an image in a lens. My reflection was finally back. It stood in the window glass, matching me perfectly. Then it blinked once, slow, and smiled, but I didn't. The sound that came next wasn't from the room. It was from behind the glass. A faint knock. 1, 2, 3. I leaned closer, whispering before I could stop myself. "Can you hear me?" The reflection nodded. Tenet spoke. "You're on the wrong side."